Sit back, relax, put your belt on, and enjoy the show.
The first game we're going to kick off for Super Rugby AU was the Waratahs going down 16-20 against the Force. For returning from injury, we had Andrew Reddy after his paternity leave, Tony Pulu after long-term injuries the last few seasons, and not technically an injury, but Andrew Reddy throwing a punch to Hugh Sinclair, the best thing he's ever done on a footy field, getting punched in the face, getting 3-week ban for that red card for Andrew Reddy. How did you see this game planning out?
Yeah, look, for me, it's just about the Force. I've been chatting to some of the players throughout last year, and we brainstorming ways of not only reaching an efficiency, but obviously sharing a lot of data from my side to see if anything is helpful. And so it almost feels like I had a little bit of a fly on the wall type of vibe with the Force, and absolutely delighted that they finally did get the win, even though it's circumstances, they probably would have liked to have the Waratahs at full strength and not under the cosh. But for me, this game is now finished, and I'd like to see how the Force are going to kick on. They say when teams finally get that win, everything seems to live by 5 to 10%. A little bit of belief, the big monkey is off your back, basically. So for me, it's all about seeing where the Force go from here. And unfortunately, they're playing the Rebels, who at the moment I think is vastly underrated. And I don't know. I don't see how the Force are going to do this, even in Perth. But yeah, it's going to be a fantastic game. And can you guys believe 2 or 3 years ago when the Force played the Rebels, it was probably one of the least celebrated derbies in Super Rugby, and yet now there's this huge buzz around it, which I think is fantastic for the game in Oz.
I think the politics that the teams have gone through over the last 4 or 5 years has played a huge part in that, and obviously so many of the Western Force players going over to the Rebels. So yeah, it's definitely going to be a huge game and one I'm really looking forward to.
Of course, yeah, absolutely.
What did you think about, you mentioned the efficiency of the Western Force. Watching that game, how do you see it unfold? How did the Force get the win over the Waratahs?
Look, we should actually be speaking to Ben Darwin at this stage about the cohesion and what these older players bring to the party. You look at Carney over the last 2 weeks, he seems to be growing into that leadership role. You have Kahui, you have in very key positions, you have these older guys, but guys with a lot of experience, and that kind of keeps things calm. Now, imagine the Reds had that, for example. The Reds are like a bunch of schoolyard kids just running around, running amok, doing whatever they like, screwing up, throwing paint all over the walls. Whereas the Force seems to have that calm, not merely the strike power or let's say the potential talent at this stage, but I think overwhelmingly what I love about Super Rugby Australia this year or the last 2 years is there's real diversity in where teams are, how they go about playing, and that's what I pick up in these efficiency analytics. Everyone plays totally differently.
Yeah,
New Zealand is a bit more homogenous. They tend to have a style that they all follow, and we know as an international team that helps them. But out of all of this, Australia is going to be able to cherry pick a style going into the international season, and I think Rennie is all too aware of that to know the guys are going about it in very different ways. Let's see what works. Let's see what is efficient. So it's exciting.
Definitely just adds another layer to that story, doesn't it? When you've got, the Tars potentially at where the Reds were 3-4 years ago, you've got the Force coming in with, tons of new faces compared to when they got kicked out a handful of years ago. But the amazing stat from this one for me was between Cubelli and Carney, their amount of international caps were higher than the amount of Super Rugby caps for the Tars starting 15. That's just absolutely crazy.
That is some stat, yeah. Wow, that shakes the building.
If one player I think I actually wanted to touch on, we weren't going to do too much of it, but Tim Anstey, he's a guy coming across from the rugby sevens. he had an absolute blinder for me. We've got him on our fantasy platform as a lock because they announced him as a lock. He'd played a bit of lock, even though he's a little bit short for it at Super Rugby level. But he was just an exciting player for me. Had his hands all over that ball in attack, and I think, he was quite involved in defence as well. Just touching on some of the statistics, the possession and territory were, all the way, I think, of the Force with 56% possession and 58% territory. And they made use of it. They had 518 to 344 meters. They had 10 to 5 offloads. But surprisingly, the Waratahs, wanted to throw the ball around, similar to what you're saying the Reds have been. And they had 9 to 3 line breaks. So they still managed to break that line. In terms of defense, the Tars had 86% tackle percentage, whereas the Force had 85%. And there was, again, a lot of penalties, as we see, a lot of these early games having high penalty counts as the refs are trying to cut out, certain behaviors. But there was 11 penalties for the Waratahs and 9 for the Reds. Do you think the makeup of these sides and that experience played a lot out with what we saw in the breakdown, the lineouts, the scrums? Because I think the Waratahs surprisingly had 100% efficiency in the lineout.
Second week in a row.
But I don't really see them, scoring off those.
Yeah, I think key to my understanding right from the start when developing these efficiency matrix was to separate the actual set piece from the attack that preceded. Now, that's how we understand analysis. You'd say a team has a strong scrum if they complete a lot of scrums or if they dominate, whereas the efficiency kind of brings in the backs immediately, because if you can't attack off that platform, it's not an efficient platform. If you can say you disrupt your opponent's line out a lot, but your back line kind of falters, and no matter if your opponent gets poor ball, they still attack well off you, then your line out defense is not strong.
Yep.
From that point of view, if you look at the Waratahs at the moment, there's a lot of set piece things that they do well. They contest really well on lineouts. Their breakdown isn't a total shambles, but you move past phase 3 against them, and again, that's where this cohesion thing makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of disruption in that camp, and it all stems from Hooper having left. He was the rock. I don't think we maybe appreciated the level to which he influenced everything that went on in the franchise, but it's gone to bits. And what's really fascinating for me to see is who's going to be the senior players that step up. Now, the media are selling us a Harrison, they're selling us a Gordon. These are the leaders through how they play. I think Swinton probably puts up his hand. He's the one guy that everyone would fear on the Waratahs side. He makes those big hits that kind of seem to galvanize the team. So for them, I wouldn't be looking at too many stats over the next few months with the Waratahs. You just want to see the culture. You want to see who's going to stand up, who's going to be players that things can be built around. And hopefully if they keep Penny, then we don't have to worry about that. But they are really exciting players. I am such a Ram groupie, and it annoys me that he gets such poor ball at the moment. The only ball he gets is the ball that he fights for.
Yep.
And even with no space, he still makes 1.5 meters, 2 meters in contact, always looking to play, but just not getting that ball. So, I'm not going to diss the Waratahs over the next few months. I just want to see, and I'd be tracking it through these efficiency metrics, how they slowly start standing up, how they slowly learn to score points again, how they slowly learn to not concede points again. So, it's going to be a nice story to see playing in front of us.
The one thing we haven't mentioned yet was the fantasy stats for the Draft Rugby platform that we run. So Fergus Lee Warner was the fantasy man of the match. He had 83 points, which is gigantic. Also the man of the match in the game, I should say. So he had a try, 16 runs, 48 meters, 19 tackles, 3 tackle busts, a line break, and a try assist. He was just everywhere. The Waratahs also had good scores from Parecki on 58 with his try as well. Will Harrison 52 and Sam Caird on 44. Not sure what he did for 44 points, to be honest. But Force, Tim Anstey got 78. He was excellent, as we've all touched on. And Feleti Katu'u, 55 points. Kahui, 47.